Right, I think this is going to be fun today. I've hit the button.
Chris is in a really bad mood.
He's in a furious mood. And weirdly, that's only that's for what I like. Chris in a bad mood for me is fun, Chris. It's fun. Uncle Fluffy's out to play.
Like he's chewing on his inside mouth already.
It's great.
He'll start chuntering away or something in a minute.
Just remember that this podcast goes out to children who might not be aware of the C word. And so I'd rather you didn't start calling us that.
So we're not getting any jokes in the pre-pod today.
No, you guys are so funny. I especially like how you prepared me for this podcast by sending me down one path and then doubling back on the other. So thanks for that.
Well, just for a bit of context, Chris asked us last week to come up with a topic. We forgot, and then yesterday
told him a lie.
Yesterday we were picking sandwiches. Sorry, on Monday when we were picking sandwiches, Chris went, "What's the podcast topic?" And we just made one up, and then
which I then prepared for. Hilarious. Yeah, really funny.
And then we had a bit of chat about how we'd lied and then forgotten to actually admit that we'd lied about the fact we'd come up with a pod topic anyway. Let's
so
not
this is
dwell
a
on
half-hour
that.
stand-in. Good.
No, it's not.
It's not.
So
It's
what
not
we're
enjoy.
It's not at all. But listen, it's going to be good. You're in top form. I think this is going to be a cracker. We're going to knock it out of the park. Okay, let's
hit
go.
the button.
Welcome to The Good. Roundup Good is a brand consultancy in the United Kingdom. From time to time we get together, we'll talk about brand and all sorts of stuff related to brand. And today we're really talking about the top of the pyramid. The top of where the point
tip
of the
of
brand.
the sphere.
The tip of
Oh no,
the
I'm mixing my
sphere.
metaphors.
No, I like it. It's all good. It's all good. And Chris wrote a really, really good article about the topic we're going to talk about today. It's a good article. Before we started, Chris said, "You better not fucking build it up because you make me
look like a brick."
dick."
At which point we pointed out that he does that well enough
you
himself.
don't need any of our help. So we then
But it is a good article.
It is a good article, and it's a very important topic because I think it's the thing that kind of gets mushed into nothingness, and it's about creating a vision for your brand.
But this one unusually talks about us, doesn't it?
Yes,
but we've allowed
us.
ourselves to talk about us today,
normally
aren't we?
we've decided to break our golden rule just to...
because we never talk about ourselves.
Well, no, we don't talk about...
Here he goes already.
I know. Strap in.
It's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, but it is that kind of thing where, like, it was nice, as Julie put it, was good context around creating a vision and just how but when we started looking at our own. So it's looking at that. So, Chris, what made you want to write this, apart from the fact that we sat in a room and said, Chris, going to write a thing about vision?
Because you told me to. But I do think it's an area that is fraught with misunderstanding, lack of sort of common terms, and an area that people and clients and lots of people massively kind of overcomplicate because there's a worry that I think there's a perception that you've got to create something massively kind of visionary, which tends to just end up being meaningless twaddle and kind of yoga babble. And I think the reason why we talked about the one that we create for ourselves is because I think it shows a path through that and demonstrates the fact that we, and you, Stuart, really, in the last, I don't know, however many years, we've managed to create a framework which helps to organize these brand elements in a way that allows us to leverage the best, for the brand, or allows us to exploit the brand, and in
very simple way.
In a simple way, yeah. So that showcase allows us to talk about ourselves because we've done it for ourselves relatively recently. So I guess talking about ourselves gives us a useful illustration of how it works, really. How it should work.
And I think when we say vision is quite complicated, I think at the top of your little article, you kind of go, when you look at other visions for brands, they seem so obvious, so self-evident, which is always a sign of a good one. But I think vision has gotten a difficult name because when you think of, a vision for the future or a vision for this, you always think of Kennedy sitting up there going, we will put a man in the moon within 10 years. And people go, that's a vision. Wow. That's a vision. And then
see that overreaching, don't you, from clients?
Yeah, and you can, well, is that a vision? Because, we didn't know how to put a man in the moon and we did it in 10 years. And that's not the purpose of it. It's not to necessarily be so
Yeah,
grandiose.
but when you work for a company that makes shower curtain rings, then it's a different prospect.
But I
isn't
think, and I think because I was thinking about this earlier, we definitely have seen both ends of the spectrum. I think, haven't we? When you talk about this, from businesses that shy away from a vision that is quite aspirational and actually feels quite unattainable, to then those that actually massively overreach and are looking for something that is, a much bigger, more purposeful reason to exist beyond the fact that, will we make shower curtains that don't leak, or whatever your or whatever your vision is. Very valuable.
Yes.
So in that pyramid, there are 3 parts to it, and we're, the bottom part's the values. We've written about that. The middle part's the mission.
We'll get to that.
But the top bit is the vision. Do you want to say what the vision? We've got a wee pyramid. What's that all about?
I mean, in the pyramid, we kind of say that it's the ultimate aim of the business. It's the aspirational. It needs to be slightly out of reach, so you're continually growing for it. And that, on a kind of timeline, is something you're checking in on year to go, are we doing this? Are we reaching our vision? In theory, you're never going to reach it. Mm-hmm. You don't need to reach it. It's not a goal. That's the thing. It's a vision. It's not a goal. And so I think it's trying to make sure that you're continually just kind of stretching to make sure that you're trying to do your vision. So we've charities are good at them. Charities are always good at vision.
Some sectors lend themselves more easily to visions that are easily to write. When you're curing cancer, it's quite a straightforward thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you say that, but then when we worked with a cancer charity, they had a lot of debate about what was the right vision for them. Because are you ever going to,
the signposts are easy, aren't they?
I know, but it's easier to be a bit more. What's the word I'm looking for? Meaningful, I guess, when you're
can tie closer to it. So that's really the kind of thing, and we've done,
and we talk about the Buzz Lightyears, don't we?
Yeah. And that's where you get a bad vision. So
to infinity and beyond.
Yeah, and
striving for tomorrow
today,
to tomorrow's horizon today.
Yeah. When you start cramming, they're usually short and snappy, and you can just see, and they're good because you kind of go up, and then they're quite empty, but they're inspirational because it's kind of like good rhetoric.
But no one knows what they mean.
Nobody, but you'll get a round of applause at the shareholders meeting, going, we are building tomorrow, today, forever. But who's going to argue with that? Who's going to argue with that? That's our vision, is to build tomorrow, today, forever.
Sounds like today in the office.
But then the problem with those, as we've seen, is that it does tend to, when you can't then use it as something to build content and themes out from, then it just lives in a drawer, doesn't it? Yeah, you can't kind of make it live every day, as we talk about a lot.
And also, it's so widely open to interpretation that you get different bits of the business going, well, I'm going to build tomorrow, today, forever in blue. That's what I'm going to do. And you kind of lose a little bit. And some of the work that we do is going back into companies because they've kind of made it a little bit vague. And normally that becomes political because the vision then has to please a lot of stakeholders, and so it just gets watered down into nothingness, into something Buzz Lightyear.
I was just going to say, I think we often talk about the benefit of objectivity in these things, don't we? And the how hard it is for clients to do this. Not performing surgery on yourself and all that kind of thing. And I think more often than not, the brand, when we work with brands to try and define this kind of stuff, it is actually really obvious. It's just about articulating that in a way that kind of feels like it reflects them and represents them. But there's a lot of kind of or there can be a lot of overthinking and overcomplication.
Yeah, it's about finding the right words just to describe where you're going. And I mean, from our point of view, when we came out of the COVID thing and thought about where we wanted to be, it really was about just reflecting on that and the type of business we wanted to be. And I suppose it came down to the fact that we've been described deliberately, focusing on describing ourselves as brand consultants and what that meant for us. And really, I think the focus of that evolution for us came down to 2 things, which was, firstly, about taking the right type of work to reflect the fact that we were proper brand consultants. And secondly, recognizing that we can easily, or we're at a point now where we can very easily, define our own point of view in the subject matter, because we've been around for a long time. So, and when you start digging into that, it becomes quite straightforward. So, the thing about work, taking the right type of work, it's, it's something that we'd been talking about a lot informally, wasn't it? About making sure that we stay away from the work that doesn't, I guess, reaffirm that position as brand consultants. But it's about sticking to our guns and being clear on what it is that we want to do. That sense of taking the right type of work was part of it. This is all the process of getting to our vision, right? Mm-hmm. The second part was about defining our point of view. And I think the one thing we are as a firm is very pragmatic and straightforward. And we know that in our industry there are lots of people that tell you that there's a formula for this and a formula for that, and the snake oil salesman type thing. But we know that there is no shortcut, and we know that the next new shiny marketing thing is probably not a thing. We've been around long enough, and we've been doing it long enough to understand and build up a bank of experience that lets us understand what works and what doesn't. So I think that that sense of being confident enough to call that stuff out helped to define our point of view. Right? Am I making sense here?
Because we've talked about that on a previous pod, haven't we? About our industry's just desire to overcomplicate everything. And I think when you look at our vision, I think that kind of very much underlines our position of simplicity, and which is obviously one of our values. But yeah,
and I think also, and the term of sacrifice is what you don't put in the vision, because obviously the way that we work with brand is there's a number of components to it. There's a strategy component, there's a design component, and what you're not going to start putting into that is going to, because you can say, well, strategy is important, we've got to make sure strategy is in the vision, and now we've got to make sure the design's in the vision, and make sure the great servicing's in the vision, because that's important as well. And suddenly it just becomes overwhelming, and that's where you get the politics of departments coming in going, where am I in this?
Totally. That's one of the things. I was scribbling some notes about this, and some of the challenges we've seen when talking to clients about this stuff, and it's exactly that. It's, it's not willing to sacrifice, that it becomes very quickly a kind of people-pleasing political exercise when you're trying to represent. And I think that does come down to what ultimately, what's your vision there to do, and that the point about, this very simple model of vision, mission, values, and being very clear about what those definitions are and what they're there to do helps with that. But yeah, the unwillingness to sacrifice is definitely something that
100%, totally agree. So we ended up with something which in its first reading sounds relatively prosaic, but actually I think has hidden depth. So our vision is to make brands and branding better understood, respected and valued, which, as I say, is a very straightforward sentence.
Can you say it again, just for the...
To make brands and branding better understood, respected and valued.
To make brands and branding better understood, respected and valued.
Sounds much better when Sean says
that. That was beautiful.
So, and I think, what's really Sean. Straightforward about it, we like it because it is, as I say, the piece, accessible, actionable and true to us. We're relatively pragmatic in our approach, as I say, and in no way is it kind of specialist or sort of esoteric in nature. It's really, really straightforward. And I think it mirrors some of the points I made about taking the right type of work, and we're confident to have that simplistic point of view. So,
and I think you can kind of look at that on the face of it and go, well, how does that help you get the right part of work? But the kind of thing, if we go in and feel that somebody calls up and has a chat with us, and we sense that they are not going to respect or value the brand work that we need to do, then, so it's not just about, we need to make it feel respected. If we feel that we're not going to get that respect back, that this is just an exercise they've got to do because somebody doesn't like they've lived with a logo for 5 years and they're bored of it, then that's not the work that's good for us.
And I think we also, when we have those sort of early qualification type conversations with clients, and we're talking about an opportunity and the sort of the willingness to be challenged, quite often clients come with a kind of self-diagnosis in terms of what they think the problem is. And I think that sort of the process that we go through to understand the kind of fundamental challenge business problem that we're looking to solve and how brand can support in doing that. If that's not a process that a client is willing to go through with us, then it's probably not the right type of work to take on. So I think there is a lot of, like you say, I think when you know us and you know how we work, there's a lot of kind of bits of other conversations that I think from the value prop stuff that we've got, the sales value prop stuff, that tie into that that vision as well. So it doesn't all need to be in the sentence, I guess is the point, isn't it?
That you take from it. It might not be explicit, but I think that it's clear and understandable. It's grandiose enough in some ways to be always out of reach, because it's a big task.
Yeah.
But it's wrapped, as I say, it's wrapped tightly enough around the concept of brand to give it some context and drive what we do as an organization every day. So that I think then showcases the fact that it's useful. It can help guide some decision making as well.
Well, right down into our values and stuff, but also what we're doing just now, with the stuff that you guys write, that we in the loosest sense of the word, write in terms of content, and the stuff that we talk about on the podcast. That all contributes towards us achieving, albeit we can't, that vision. Do you know what I mean? So,
and I think from my perspective, I think you can pick to make brands and branding better understood. For me, I leave it at there. You know what I mean? Because in some ways, a lot of the stuff I'm doing is now at the start of presentations go, let me explain our position on brand, because it's like one of those words like digital or anything else. Like, it means so much. It means very different things to different people. And even just to say, this is where we think brand is and how it's important for your business. And even that's the start of 9 out of 10 of every one of my presentations at the moment, just because so that everybody's on the same page about why it's important.
But the two other words are, for me, are equally as important. The respect part, because brand is often derided in the media and the mainstream as something that's fluffy. It's pictures, it's colouring in, and I think the last point is it's important, and when you understand it, there is a value to it, and it can drive extreme value. Right? It's about margins. Brands allow you to charge more for a product than unbranded products or poorly branded products. There's a value aspect dynamic to them, so they're really, really important to business.
And not to blow our own trumpet.
Sounded a bit more like a trombone.
I'll be better. But I mean, it's 10 words. And Chris, you honed those 10 words.
Thank you.
I need to get you in a good mood.
I know you're just saying
but
that.
it's 10 words that you can
pack a lot of punch.
They do pack a lot of punch, and it's kind of honing it. And again, as you say at the very top of the article, it seems self-evident, but there is a lot of working it out and putting it there.
Because when it started, I had no idea what it was going to be.
And I have to say, this is one of the rare occasions that we did do
ourselves,
our homework. We can, and we're normally we know that objectivity is a good thing on these things, but this was the first time that we did it ourselves, and it was just packing the vision into 10 words that you can take. So I'm focusing on the understood. Don't get me wrong, I'm still respecting and I'm still valuing, but it's just for my first point, that understood thing helped to lift my presentations a little bit, just to make sure everybody was on the same page. That's what's really strong about it for me, and I think. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about us. When you're kind of looking, if you're listening to this and going, this all sounds great, how is this going to help me? How are we summing it up? Is it kind of going, right, think about the sacrifice, think about how would you sum it up for somebody externally?
Well,
process.
I think, it's a good question, and I suppose it's the key question. But I think it's about having that sense of understanding the direction of travel of the organisation, and the sacrifice point. I think the point Jules made earlier is really good, that so often these exercises become exercises in verbal inclusivity about how we're going to include words that tick the box for every department within the business, and then they become meaningless. I think the knocking the edges off all of that stuff to something really sharp just takes time, and so it's sort of deep reflection and deep thinking about where your business is and where you want it to be. You can't do it unless you engage with that exercise and then kick it about and bounce it off people, or bring somebody else in to help you do it. Because when we do this for clients, normally we're starting with something, right? There's something there. They've written something. There's a kernel somewhere that we take and sharpen.
And although we're saying, that kind of people-pleasing exercise can be quite political and quite a challenge to deal with, that's not to say that you don't consult as part of the process. All the departments across the business generally are represented in some shape or form in these conversations that we're having with clients, but it's then the sort of distillation of that into something that isn't just, doesn't just become word soup. And meaningless. That's the challenging bit, and that's where the benefit of objectivity, I think, definitely comes in.
Yeah. So as I say in the piece, there's the analysis piece, there's the sacrifice element, and that delivers you some sense of clarity on what your vision should be, really.
For me, that kind of consultative approach isn't a workshop. It's a one-on-one. Just if anybody was thinking of doing it, for me, it's just sitting in a room and going, so tell me about the business and what's this and that and everything else, rather than a workshop, because it then
Yeah, you don't do it in a day.
No, you don't do it in a day. And also, you're always looking at the person who you think is more important, kind of going, what do they think? And it's important that you kind of just talk about and it all ties into the values and why you're here and everything else. It's a really interesting process to get to fit in with your whole brand thing. It all kind of ties together.
But the exercise you did, the project we did with Ford Retail years ago now that became Trust Ford. I mean, that was I know it wasn't necessarily just purely focused on sort of brand depth, but there was a huge consultative element to that, wasn't there? Like you say, was what, a 6-month period probably with, everything from board level to people in, working in servicing and parts departments and showrooms. And that sort of, that's, a combination of workshops, of interviews, of one-on-one, that it's not a one and done when it comes to...
Yeah, that's part of the making people feel included in the process. But once, I think that getting to this point is only half the journey, really. We talk about this with clients, that it's now about, right, so that now we've done that.
What are you going to do with it?
It doesn't, where does that go? Because these things generally aren't customer facing. That they should be internal. And, and we're going through a process now of making some of this stuff a bit more explicit in our world, in our studios,
and it's explicit in a kind of way, because I know I've seen it a few times where it's up on the wall in the reception area that you walk in and go, there it is, and then job done, and that's it there. But it is about trying to understand, and it needs management, and it needs tended, and it needs to be made sure that it is there every way, but not necessarily explicitly in that. The spirit of it is more of an important thing to kind of get to not just plastered everywhere, but what does this mean and how do we do it? So for me, how does it come alive in my presentations? How does that come alive?
And if you look at the content we create, which is part of this podcast, part of the stuff we write, some of the carousels we create around explaining, why things are important, that all plays to this.
Yeah, totally.
That all plays to this about making brands and branding better understood, respected, and valued.
Yep.
It's sharing that knowledge and our point of view, the confidence we have to say, this is how this works. This is how you do this. That all plays to us, I guess, showcasing our expertise.
And I do think that's where sometimes, and we've seen it in the past, and we've probably been guilty of allowing it to happen maybe in the past with where there's that link from the kind of foundational brand work that's done that doesn't then kind of inform a sort of content strategy or a content planning piece. And that's what, and not to say that we don't necessarily create all of that content, but to provide that sort of next level of depth and detail around, like you say, how does it come to life? And, some of it will be, we had a conversation recently with a client around, employer brand. And I think, again, that can often overcomplicate things because it feels like it should be something different. And how often do we have to, pull it back to say, it should all come from here. And then how do you represent that internally to your
100%.
To your teams? And it's just, I think, again, like we say I've said a million times before, the simpler the better with these things, because that's how you get it that's how it'll stick.
Yeah.
Consistent application applies here as much as it does to internally, as much as it does externally.
I think that's what's important about these things, that it anchors the business to something bigger than itself and provides a point of view when we're doing stuff in our day-to-day, and we're going through when we move through our day-to-days.
And the whole pyramid will help, the mission will help you with that, and the vision and the values will help you through that. What I like about this is the vision is your end of year meeting. You can sit back and we can go, so how have we helped brands and branding be better understood, respected and valued over the last year? How have we done that?
Yes.
And it becomes a tangible thing about the work
rather than how have we got to infinity and beyond.
Yeah. How do we build tomorrow today?
Yesterday, forever. In blue.
It does come down to that.
Yeah.
It's something that can be looked at from different perspectives, and it's easy to understand.
Yeah, because I mean, that you can see that's the slide for us at Christmas to go, right. So how have we done this year, and what is it? And that's involved the people. We've got good people coming in. We've brought in new people to help. That it covers everything.
And it's a journey.
It's a journey. Oh, it's a journey. Listen, Chris,
what a fun journey!
What a fun journey! I don't mind saying, Chris, I think you're in a better mood.
No, really.
Come on,
come on. Dressed up for this. As soon as we're off here, you guys are getting it.
I'll get you another wee bowl of crisps.
I know, you're fine, man. You're fine. You've had a good day.
Yeah.
You've had a good day.
It's 4:30. You can nearly call it a day and go home.
You've done a great job.
Right. Fancy going for a drink?
No. Bye.